Hello viewers and learners. Today we will discuss in this session on droughts, which forms a part of MEV 002 Environmental and Occupational Hazards. I introduce myself as Dr. Sushmitha Baskar, working in the discipline of Environmental Studies from the School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies, Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi. Now, after listening to this module, you will be able to define the term drought, explain the consequences of drought, describe the stages of drought, and also discuss drought management. First, let us give an introduction to drought and how this occurs. So, a drought is normally a period of abnormal dryness in a region, and this can last for months or years, and it can also be declared after as few as 15 days. So, it depends how long it takes for that area to be declared as a drought prone area. Hot temperatures can even make it worse. Maybe there can be evaporation of moisture from the soil. When a region experiences a noticeable deficit in water supply or rains for extended periods such as months or years, then drought can occur. A region is termed drought affected when it receives consistently below average precipitation. So, these are some of the reasons why a drought can occur in a certain region. Intense drought, as we say, this can cause significant damage to the local economy. Droughts are hazards and they are unique in the sense as they are slow onset hazards. So, they take time and they can be even creeping hazards, and they can even take months and years to manifest themselves. They may lead to secondary effects like famine. We will see some case studies and examples in the further slides. It damages the ecosystem and agriculture of the affected region. The consequences of drought. It can have significant environmental, agricultural, health and socio-economic consequences. This can also vary according to the vulnerability. People who are more involved in farming and agricultural activities, they migrate during drought because they don't have any other alternate food source. They don't have any other means of supporting themselves. So, the droughts can reduce the quality of water, they can reduce the quality of the soil, and it can lead to the water contamination. All this is because the lowering the water flows. This can reduce the dilution of pollutants and also contaminate the water supplies. The consequences of drought can also lead to the decreased crop growth, a decreased carrying capacity for livestock. They can erode the landscapes. If you have ever been to the desertified regions, drought inflicted regions, you will see that the ground is actually, the ground has cracks, absolutely no water at all, and it appears totally dry. So, there is no plant or any kind of agriculture or anything that would be possible on such a landscape. So, they erode the landscapes. There can be the dust storms, and as a result of all this, famine can occur as a result of low water for irrigation. So, people who are living in that area also can be affected due to drought. Often there have also been the reports on the media where the farmers commit suicide because of extended periods of drought, and there is no water availability, there is less precipitation, and they are not able to carry on their agricultural activities. Certain other consequences of drought include the health problems such as malnutrition and dehydration, anxiety, depression. There can be habitat and ecosystem destruction and damage. There could be mass migration resulting in internal displacement of people. There could be shortage of water for the industrial users. There could be wildfires, and there can be disputes over natural resources including water and food, and also social unrest. Let us now discuss the stages of drought. Droughts undergo 3 critical stages before their ultimate manifestation. The first one is a meteorological drought. This precedes the other kinds of drought, and it occurs when there is an extended period with less than average precipitation, and as the name indicates, it has something to do with the meteorological phenomena. and the weather patterns. Agricultural drought. This affects the crop production of the region. It also occurs as a result of extended periods of low and below average precipitation. And it occurs when the available water supplies are unable to meet the needs of crops or livestock at a particular time. It may stem from the meteorological drought, and there may be reduced access to the water supplies. Hydrological drought. As the name indicates, this may be due to the water reserves. So when the water reserves in the aquifers, lakes and other reservoirs, they fall below the statistical average, then this drought occurs. It can also occur when there is a lack of rainfall, and this persists long enough to deplete the surface water, the rivers, the reservoirs, streams and also the groundwater supplies. Now the developing countries are vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, including drought. We would have observed that 80% of the drought induced economic damage and loss that are suffered by the developing countries from 2005 to 2015, that is a 10-year period. It was all related to livestock, crops and fisheries. The drought creates water and food insecurity, famine and also the civil unrest. So all this finally leads to mass migrations and displacement of the populations from one place to another. If we are to cite some case studies in India, Indian agriculture is mainly dependent on the climate of India, which is a favorable southwest summer monsoon. We are an agrarian economy and basically most of us practice agriculture, and that is the basic occupation of many. So this monsoon is critical in securing water for irrigating the Indian crops, and in certain parts of India, the failure of the monsoons result in water shortage. It can result in below average crop yield. This is true for the major drought prone regions such as southern and eastern Maharashtra, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Orissa, Gujarat and also Rajasthan. One example is the Indian famine. In the past, droughts have periodically occurred and they have led to major Indian famines, including the Bengal famine of 1770, in which up to 1/3 of the population in the affected areas died. In 1876 to 1877 of that famine, 5 million people died, and also from 1899 in that famine 4.5 million people died. So this was some of the cases relating to Indian famine. The causes of drought. There could be natural causes and also anthropogenic causes. The natural causes are triggered by the cyclical weather patterns such as the amount of moisture and heat in the air, land and the sea. There can be fluctuating ocean and land temperatures. Ocean temperatures, these largely drive the global weather patterns, including dry and wet conditions on the land and even small temperature fluctuations. They can have the ripple effects, huge ripple effects on climate systems. The temperature changes mainly in the North Pacific and the North Atlantic Oceans. They correspond directly to the extreme weather patterns on land, including persistent droughts in North America and the Eastern Mediterranean, the latter of which has been described as the region's worst drought in the past 900 years. Further, fluctuating ocean temperatures are also responsible and they are behind the El Nino and the La Nina weather phenomena. So you see how the fluctuating ocean and land temperatures can also drive the global weather patterns. Altered weather patterns. The distribution of rainfall around the world is also impacted by how the air circulates through the atmosphere. When there is an anomaly in the surface temperatures, especially over the sea, air circulation patterns are altered, so the precipitation patterns also change. Reduced soil moisture, this can impact the cloud formation and also precipitation. So when the water from the wet soil evaporates, it helps in the formation of rain clouds which return the water back to the earth. When the land is dry, moisture evaporates into the atmosphere but not as much as to form the rain clouds. So the land gets drier and it can remove additional moisture and it will lead to the drier conditions. So these are some of the natural causes. Man-made or the anthropogenic causes are also responsible for drought. Climate change and global warming impacts drought. Rising temperatures can make the wet regions wetter and the drier regions drier. Climate change can also alter the large scale atmospheric circulation patterns which can shift the storm tracks from their usual path. Excess water demands. So, population explosion and intensive agricultural water use can put stress on the water resources. From 1960 to 2010, increased frequency of drought in some regions has been noticed. You can see the time period, almost 40 to 50 years. Increased pumping of water from the groundwater for our own needs, from the borewell and other supplies. We are increasingly pumping the water from the groundwater, from the rivers, from the reservoirs. All this are depleting the water resources, and it takes years for this water to be replenished, and permanently they can impact the future water availability. Further, the demand for water supplied by irrigation and the hydroelectric dam, this can also lead to the drying out of the downstream water sources. So, all these are the man-made effects. In the same way, deforestation and soil degradation. Trees and plants, they release moisture into the atmosphere, the clouds form and rain falls to the ground. When forest and vegetation totally disappear from an area, you can see in this figure that area is entirely cut, all the trees have gone off. So, the ground is clear. So, where will you get the rain clouds and where will you get the rain from? So, when all this vegetation disappears, then there can be fluctuations in the hydrological cycle, in the water cycle, and regions become vulnerable to drought. Deforestation, intensive farming can reduce the soil quality and the land's ability to absorb and retain water. So, these were the consequences of the drought and how the causes, both the natural and the man-made causes, are responsible for drought. How can we prevent and prepare for droughts? The 1930s Dust Bowl was due to the poor agricultural practices combined with the cooling of the Pacific and the warming of the Atlantic. So, we can reduce our water consumptions, use water more efficiently, and we can prepare for the same. How can we do this? Climate change mitigation. We can reduce our dependence and use of the fossil fuels. We can switch to clean and renewable energy. The Paris Agreement, which was adopted by nearly every nation in 2015, this aims to limit the Earth's warming over the next century to 2 degrees and lays the framework for the global climate action. Now, this will succeed only if the countries go beyond their commitments. One thing which is important and what we can all practice is urban water conservation and efficiency. By using the water and energy efficient technologies, we can reduce the impacts of the droughts. Adopting certain landscape designs that make use of the drought prone plants. For example, you can use cacti, you can use the desert variety of plants which require less amount of water for their growth. You can use a water efficient irrigation techniques, like you can use the sprinklers or the waters and not by using the hoses and the pipes which are releasing large amounts of water into those areas for horticulture as well as agriculture. We should also attend to the leaking pipes, and here again the information systems like the GIS and smart sensor techniques, all this can come of help for the conservation and efficiency of the water and the energy resources. Water recycling. Recycled water can be used for the landside irrigation, also at home in the domestic purposes. You can use the water that has been used for washing the vegetables or dal and for the washing purposes. They can be recycled. They can also be, you can even treat the water and use them for certain other purposes, maybe in your home gardens for the other purposes. So, for landscape irrigation, industrial processes, for the cooling mechanisms, for non-potable uses such as the garden or lawn irrigation, for all these purposes, the recycled water can be employed. Agricultural water conservation and efficiency. So, increased water efficiency and reduced consumption, that can be done using improved irrigation techniques such as drip irrigation. This is being followed by many farmers. Crop rotation and also no-till farming or the zero-till farming for minimal soil disturbance. This is also being practiced by many farmers, and we can also use the cover crops that can actually help build the soil health, and it can enable the land to absorb and retain more water. So, these are some of the ways how we can actually go about mitigating and conserving the water for the agricultural purposes and for our own domestic and also industrial purposes. where the water can be recycled, and by use of smart and efficient sprinklers and drip irrigation and other sensors and mechanisms where the leaky pipes and all this could be attended to. So, these are certain efficient ways how we can reduce the water dependency. And some more aspects are, we need to reduce our dependence and the over extraction of the groundwater and the for using them in the bottled water segment and certain other aspects. Now the droughts can also result in desert formation and desertification. So, how do we define deserts? These are subtropical arid regions where the potential evaporation is above 2000 millimeter and the annual precipitation is about less than 200 millimeter. So, that means the evaporation is more than the precipitation, and then the ground becomes dry. The desertification is also defined by the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification as land degradation in arid, semi-arid and dry subhumid regions resulting from various factors including climatic variations and human activities. What are the characteristics of deserts? Now, the desert will have a dry climate. The nature of precipitation is also important. Now, here the rate of evaporation, as I said, will be more than the rate of precipitation. Then there are causal factors of dryness. There is no vertical air movement, so no air cooling and no atmospheric condensation takes place. The high landscape erosion potential is there, and there is lack of vegetation, and there is also sudden intense rainfall events that can occur. Weathering. So, weathering, there are actually three types of weathering: physical, chemical and biological weathering. But in deserts, the physical weathering will be dominant and the chemical is limited to minimal because of the absence of water. Then there is poor soil development. So, when the soil and everything is dry, naturally the soil development is also very poor, it becomes totally degraded. Then the impermeable surface layers is also an important factor, and that is why it results in the problems with the agriculture and the plant growth. Due to the bedrock, salt beds and hard pans form, and there is little infiltration and more of the surface runoff. The drainage patterns are also characteristic. So, they have the ephemeral streams that flow either seasonally or during the storms. So, these are some of the characteristics of the deserts. The global distribution. The hot deserts, these are situated near the equator, and here the day temperatures can go up to 38 degrees centigrade. The nights will be cold. Some examples are the Great Sandy Desert in Australia. Cold desert. These are found away from the equator in the center of the continents. Argentina and Antarctica is one example. Inland deserts, as the name indicates, they are found far away from the sea, inland. The coastal deserts are those that are found by the sea, and these are found on the west coast of the earth's continents where they have warm summers and cool winters. Then there are semi-arid deserts. These have 250 to 350 millimeters of the rainfall. Then the temperatures normally range between 20 and 30 degrees centigrade. There is more than 1/3 of the Australia is a semi-arid desert type. So, this forms the global distribution of certain deserts. Some more under this are the subtropical deserts, which are located at latitudes above or near the Tropic of Cancer, the Great Sahara Desert of North Africa, Arabian Desert of the Middle East and the Tropic of Capricorn, in the Australian interior and the interior pampas of Argentina. The mid-latitude deserts. This includes the Gobi Desert of Central Asia, the deserts in the western interior of the United States. What are the characteristics of the desert plants? So, these are normally annual, ephemeral and the perennial plants. They can also be classified as drought escapers, evaders and resistors. So, they can resist the drought conditions. The plants that are found in the deserts are called as xerophytes. Cacti are drought resistors and they have spines all around their body that can cool the plant. The cacti also store moisture in their spongy stems during the periods of rain, and they use it also during their dry periods. The mesquite trees, these have the long taproots and they can go even up to 100 feet to help them reach for the groundwater. So, they have their adapted conditions which are adapted for surviving in these drought and desert conditions. Then creosote is another desert resistor, and that produces toxins and releases them so that the other plants cannot come and survive in that area around them, so that they are able to get the nutrition, whatever nutrition is possible from the place. Then there are the annual plants. These are normally herbaceous and they have a life cycle of less than a year. Examples include Panicum turgidum. You have the ephemeral plants that has a very short life cycle. Alyssum allysoides. These plants come after the rains and they reproduce and die before a new drought season. Then there are also perennial plants. They survive by the minimal loss of water. They can be xerophytic. The leaves are leathery in texture and they are coated with wax. Then the stoma or the stomata, which are openings on the plant's leaf, they are closed so that the transpiration and the evaporation content can be reduced. Most of the examples that can be cited under this classification are the Cactaceae and also the Euphorbiaceae. Desert animals. The animals also adapt to the dry, desert and drought conditions according to the availability of water, food and survival in the extreme weather condition. The first one important is estivation. So during the drought season, the animals can estivate and they can escape drought by sleeping, known as estivation. Spadefoot toads, they can sleep in the underground burrows for years together covered by a jelly-like substance. And others include the desert reptiles and the snails, which can also remain in their shells for as long as even 5 years. Then they also produce resistant eggs. They can produce tough and resistant eggs which can tolerate years of heat, and examples under this category include the crustaceans and the triops. They can also migrate to different areas like the Melopsittacus undulatus. It can travel thousands of kilometers during the extremely dry seasons and then it can return when the season is favorable. Nocturnal activity. There are many of the animals that can avoid the day heat and they can burrow inside and live in the cool deep burrows which are underground. So they can actually live inside the ground. Soaring. You have seen this in the case of birds. So birds soar high so that they can escape the heat temperatures, and in the higher temperatures it is cooler, and the hawks, vultures and eagles do this by soaring high up in the air. Then the big ears and long legs. These are also some adaptations of the desert animals which is commonly noticed in the camel. So they have very big ears and long legs so that they can actually cool their body by radiating heat. Jackrabbits, the desert foxes, camel, all these are some examples under this fauna. The camel especially has certain special adaptations, as they can store fat in their hump for food. They have long eyelashes for the protection during sandstorms. They have a thick coat of fur and underwool for insulation. They conserve the water by excreting concentrated urine and dry feces. They can also lose up to 25% of its body weight when there is no water availability, and they can rehydrate when there is water availability. So these are some unique adaptations of the camel, and they can even drink almost 150 liters of water in just 10 minutes, and they can survive the body temperature even when it is higher than 12 degrees. So in humans, even a 1 or 2 degree rise in body temperature, we become quite uneasy, fatigued, and you need some medical intervention. But here in the case of camel, even when it goes above 12 degrees centigrade, it can still tolerate the heat. Finally, combating desertification and drought. The United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification 2006, it is an international treaty that aims to promote effective action through innovative local programs and international partnerships. More than 1 billion people have little access to water, and it is estimated that by 2030 the demand will increase by 30%. This will displace 700 million people by the year 2030. Land degrading practices should be discouraged and sustainable land use practices should be followed. The World Day to Combat Desertification and Drought. This is observed on the 17th of June annually. The General Assembly adopted the convention to combat desertification, linking environment and development to sustainable land management. And it also makes the public aware of the land degradation, work for improvement and improving the conditions for people living in the dry lands to restore the soil productivity and to address drought mitigation. So dear learners, in this module you have understood the definition of drought, how droughts are caused, the causes of drought, both natural as well as the anthropogenic causes. You have also understood the consequences of drought and the impacts of drought, and also certain case studies relating to drought and the Indian famine, and how drought and famine are also related to each other. We have also seen certain techniques and technologies that can be used for the water conservation in the agricultural and also in the domestic sector, where water can be used efficiently. We can reduce our consumption of the water resources, and thereby how we can also mitigate and prepare for the drought and drought consequences. Thank you.